This is the Chicken Yogi Show, hosted by the Chicken Yogi, Kit Kilstow. Kit creates neurodivergent and chronic illness liberation through a devotion to radical free-range wellness. Look for wellness as unique as you are and find your own path with the Chicken Yogi way. Learn more and receive a free gift when you subscribe to their newsletter at chickenyogi.com. And now, today's show. Welcome to this week's episode of the Chicken Yogi Show. I want to pause and do just a little bit of self-promotion. When you go to chickenyogi.com, you will find a bunch of information, and I have actually fed all the sub-blogs into the main blog. So when you click on that blog link, you're going to see everything. But you might want to explore and see what else is at Chicken Yogi. So when you click on the link that says Explore Chicken Yogi at the top, it will take you to a website that lists everything that is under the Chicken Yogi umbrella. I have talked before about how I am AUDHD, autistic and ADHD. And so one of the things that I saw when I was putting this page together is how this made both sides of my brain very happy. When I look at everything in its neat little category with its button taking you where it can go, that made my autistic side of everything in its place and everything in order very, very happy. And yet when I looked at all the various things I cover and all the various things I do, that made my multi-passionate ADHD side extremely happy as well. So I'm happy, both sides of me, to share this with you. When you visit the site, I just want to kind of go through what you'll see here and talk about two specific subblogs, the Fibromyalgia yoga teacher and the Autistic yoga teacher. So first we have the Chicken Yogi Academy, which houses all of my courses and webinar replays. There are courses there, most of them right now are under $20, that talk about meditation. There's a replay of my webinar talking about yoga and chronic illness, and I will be adding more courses to the Academy as time goes by. There's the link to the Autistic yoga teacher, which I will talk about here in just a little bit. There is also the link to the club and the community. The general Chicken Yogi community is free, and so I encourage you to click on the club and community link and sign up as a free member. The Chicken Yogi Club is my library of on-demand yoga and meditation videos. We do monthly wellness journeys, which are kind of monthly journaling exercises or exercises to get you thinking about your wellness in a new and unique way. And club membership, as of April 1st, will start at $19 a month. Now, that's not the final price. That's still an introductory price. So if you're listening to this after April of 2023, you'll have to look for the current pricing. Most likely it'll be for everything around $49 a month with the smaller membership that will get you just the library of yoga videos. But for now, depending on when you're listening to this, hop over to the club and community. I usually have some specials or some passes going on. There is the Fibromyalgia yoga teacher. There's my help and support hub. Basically, there are FAQs there, frequently asked questions on what I do, some of the questions about my classes. There's a form for you to contact me there. And so that's just a place where I keep all of those types of questions and information together. There's a page for this podcast, of course. And then there is Unscramble It by Chicken Yogi, which is where I focus specifically on work-life wellness, because you cannot separate your working life from the rest of your life. You know, one of my big things is having connection, and that means connecting all of the various aspects of your life together. And so we need to actually connect our work wellness to the rest of our lives. Too often, employee wellness, work wellness type programs are only focused on making you more productive at work and hopefully saving your employer money on health insurance costs, at least in the US. So I want to actually separate the work wellness from the work and bring it into a more holistic and connected environment. And that's what Unscramble It is. I also have an energy work site that I'm working on that talks about my Reiki work, the work that I'm actually doing with a unique energy modality that I am developing right now that's doing some pretty exciting things. And then hopefully I'll be expanding into the realm of video with the Chicken Yogi TV. So that's what you see there on the Explore page. And I want to spend the rest of this podcast talking specifically about the autistic yoga teacher and the fibromyalgia yoga teacher. Both of those communities, the autistic community and the fibromyalgia community, are near and dear to my heart. Both of those communities are ones that I'm a part of and that I'm passionate about. And especially in the fibromyalgia community, yoga has become a bit of a joke. The phrase, well, have you tried yoga, is something that those of us in the chronic illness community almost laugh at, because people throw it out, first of all, without realizing that there are so many different schools of yoga. There's different focuses of yoga. There's so many different types of yoga classes. They think that yoga is some generic thing like walking or running that really can apply everywhere and all the time and is always the same. Now, I'm sure if you're a walker or a runner, you'll tell me that no, not every time is the same, and that is true. But with yoga classes, there are so many different varieties of yoga. For example, there's yin yoga, which talks about stretching the fascia or the connective tissue, which is something that actually really is good for fibromyalgia. There is hatha yoga, which is a more athletic form of yoga. There's the Ashtanga school, which is how I was actually originally taught, which is kind of a more everyman's yoga. There is the, you know, restorative yoga, which is so wonderful. It's basically letting your props, your blocks, your blankets being supported and nourished in these yoga positions. And then we have obviously accessible yoga, which is a passion of mine, making yoga accessible for all sorts of people with all sorts of pain and mobility issues. And when you think about all the different schools, it's amazing that people can just lump all the yoga in together. And so with the fibromyalgia yoga teacher, my goal is to hopefully make yoga not the laughing stock of the fibromyalgia community. There are people out there that will teach you that fibromyalgia can be cured through yoga, and that their work with yoga and meditation and mindfulness has cured their fibromyalgia. And I am really hesitant, first of all, to use a cure narrative, because the whole point of a chronic illness is one that goes on for a long time. I prefer a more remission, so it flares and then goes into remission type narrative, especially with something like fibromyalgia. But also, fibromyalgia, at least for me personally, and from talking to other people with the condition, is based on so many other aspects or facets of our life. That fibromyalgia, it's not like a broken bone, for example, where you have a fall and boom, you break a bone. And so that condition suddenly happened. It sprung upon you. Fibromyalgia, while you may suddenly get a diagnosis of it, most likely people are actually dealing with the fatigue, the pain, the joint stiffness, the fibro fog, all the numerous conditions and symptoms that make up fibromyalgia. They've been dealing with it for a very long time. And in fact, it can take years to get a diagnosis. And in some ways, fibromyalgia is the modern diagnosis of hysteria. More women or more female identified people than men are identified with, I can't talk today. See, fibro fog are diagnosed with fibromyalgia. And often that is because the health of people who are femme presenting or who are woman identified, their health is often dismissed and overlooked. And I know for myself, I can't speak for the entire fibromyalgia community, but for myself and in conversations with some fellow autistic fibromyalgia people, that it is our fact that our autism was missed for so many years, and we went through so many years of sensory overload, sensory pain, shutdowns, meltdowns, without realizing that we had autism, and that's actually what caused our fibromyalgia. There is a website out there called Twist that is doing some excellent work around Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, EDS, and talking about how a lot of people with fibromyalgia actually probably have EDS, which you commonly think of as bendy joints, being double jointed, hyperflexing your joints. And I know if you watch my yoga videos, you'll see me talking about it to my knees, for example, because my knees will hyperflex relatively easily when I'm doing certain standing poses. It's just natural to flip those knees backwards and lock them when that's really not very healthy for your knees. And so that's the sort of thing that I'm going to talk about with the fibromyalgia yoga teacher, is some of the ins and outs of the condition, how yoga can help those symptoms. For example, I find a more yin, a more restorative type yoga to be extremely relaxing, especially after a super stressful day at work. I can just do some yin stretches, some restorative yoga poses where you hold them for a couple, 3, 4, 5 minutes or longer, and really get that stretch down into your fascia tissues and into your muscles. And I find that very relaxing. There's a lot of people that have received help through yoga nidra, which is more of a half sleep, half relaxation, half meditation type of yoga. So I'll just talk about all of that with the fibromyalgia yoga teacher. And that brings me to the flip side of that blog, or the autistic yoga teacher. One of the things I want to do with both of these blogs is to speak to yoga practitioners and yoga instructors themselves. There are a lot of people, for example, jumping on the bandwagon for accessible yoga, and I think that's a wonderful thing. Please don't get me wrong. Anytime we can make our yoga classes more accessible, we're going to be doing great things for our students. But accessible for somebody, for example, with mobility challenges may not be the same accessible for somebody who is neurodivergent, who has sensory processing issues. And so at the autistic yoga teacher, I'm going to talk about how yoga helps me with my autism. For example, yoga helps me with my perception of my body, with knowing where I'm at in space, of actually connecting myself to my body, because a lot of autistic individuals talk about not having that perception of basic bodily functions. It's very hard sometimes for me to know if I'm hungry or not, especially if I'm, hyper focusing and doing a lot of work, especially if I'm working on, my website, my blog, a podcast, whatever. I can go for hours without eating. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh my goodness, I am starving. Or I find myself getting short tempered and going, oh, wait a minute, I'm hungry. I should eat something. So with the autistic yoga teacher, I want to talk about how yoga helps mitigate some of the sensory processing issues, and how mindfulness and meditation helps mitigate some of the sensory processing issues that neurodivergent individuals will encounter, and will help get us a better relationship with our body. But also, I want to talk to yoga teachers, because as it says right on the exploration page, most yoga classes are geared toward neurotypical people. And an example that I gave in one of my blogs is I was doing a beginner yoga video, and the instructor had us going through the sun salutation, which, you can usually do in a couple of minutes if you're moving right along and your body obeys you, and you have the flow down. And she wanted us to do something like 5 of these in 10 minutes or something like that. And it was just pose, 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 pose. It was just boom, 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 boom. And for my mind to process that and talk to my body and move my body that quickly, and then you add some mobility challenges I have, especially when doing the 4-limb staff pose, which is more of like being down in the bottom part of a push-up pose that requires a lot of chest and shoulder strength, and I don't have a lot of mobility in my shoulders and upper back due to a variety of reasons. And so when you compound those, that beginner's class was not all that beginner friendly. And so that's what I want to talk about with the autistic yoga teacher. And I'm actually hoping to put some classes together for yoga instructors as somebody who is a trained yoga instructor, as well as, exploring this through my college work. I'm currently taking a yoga and meditation class, which has just been fascinating because we talk about historical schools and historical ways of thinking about yoga, how that transforms into modern yoga, where all of that comes from, where now that we're suddenly bringing science and scientific studies into this. So there's a lot of information out there, and I want to bring that to yoga instructors as well as individuals either who have fibromyalgia or fibromyalgia-like conditions, or who are autistic or neurodivergent, to show them that, one, yoga can be helpful. Yoga is not a joke, but also to show them a healthy, supportive way to do yoga, and